At least they're not making any dust, I guess. So typical. Supposed to make a V here, like this, with your tape. Now this was a new one to me. Personally, I don't use Rustoleum on automotive projects, typically unless the customer is working with a tight budget or requests it. Let's walk through and look at these jobs. Now, what would a customer pay you to pressure wash, clean that, and paint it? What about that? What about 3 fence posts? What do you think you could charge to paint 3 fence posts black? What can you charge somebody to paint that? Hey everybody, it's Vincent here, and today we have a really big paint day. And after seeing how well received the last Rustoleum how-to video was, I thought maybe we would kind of do another video, a 2.0 if you will, with all of the input that you guys added in the comments section also. So I think what we'll do is we'll go from the very beginning, which would be a new gun, all the way through to the very end, and then incorporate a lot of the pro tips that you guys added in the comments section from the last video. Now, I'm in no way any type of authority figure on Rustoleum paints. We have, however, been turning Rustoleum into a 2K paint, if you will, for a long time by adding in hardener. It really helps out, and your end product will benefit greatly. And that is really valuable information. But you guys, the viewers, added a ton more valuable information in the comment section. So I sat down this morning, pulled up the video, and read through all of the comments. And I think what we're going to do is incorporate a lot of the really good comments and kind of make the ultimate Rustoleum how-to video. Now, all of the projects that are set up behind you guys have already been pressure washed, they've already been degreased, and they are ready to spray. Everything is going to be sprayed black with the exception of the ladder, which is going to be fleet white. We're going to be spraying that with a product line known as Axalta, used to be known as Ellis. It's still an Alkyd enamel, or acrylic Alkyd, which is exactly what Majic paint is, Rustoleum, Ace, Rust Stop, Valspar, industrial enamel. These are all acrylic Alkyds. So they're all going to respond roughly the same way to adding in hardener. Japan drier. We will not be using this stuff today. It is really invaluable during the fall, winter, and spring months when you don't have so much sun and heat. This is also a type of accelerator. It's a little bit different than the regular catalyst that we use. This one is salt-based. You can use those in conjunction. I've got another video on that. So I thought I'd just quick touch on the Japan dryer. We won't be using it today though. Now, one of the reoccurring comments that I kept getting on the other video was, well, spraying bulk paint isn't really cheaper than rattle cans because of the cost of the compressor. You're right. If you had to go out and buy a compressor for one job and one job only, then yeah, that would break your budget. If you have a hobby shop, you need to have a compressor. 12 gallons, I would say, would be the minimum. You will greatly benefit from having a compressor around. If this is kind of like just a one-time deal for you, where you're not ever going to be needing a compressor ever again to even air up tires in your bikes or your lawnmower or your car, if that's just absolutely out of the question, then yeah, it's not cheaper. You're right. It's not cheaper to spray the bulk. At that point, this video is probably not for you. If this is something that you might be doing occasionally, and if you have pneumatic tires in your life, then buy the compressor because it's going to pay for itself. You will realize how valuable it is once you own it and start using it and incorporating it into your shop life. Okay, so setting this gun up out of the package so far has entailed me screwing on the paint cup. I got to put a little Teflon on the air inlet here, and I've got my air fitting ready to go. Whenever you recycle one of these guns, whenever you're done with it, Always remember to pull your air fitting off. This thing's been on probably about a dozen guns. Now I mentioned in my last video, I'm set up so that my paint hose inlet is regulated down. That way I don't have to have the regulator on the gun. But you do need to regulate your air pressure down. Max input pressure of this is 50 to 70 psi. That's your window. Okay, before we move on, let's quickly go over the requirements, air requirements for this gun. That was another very common comment that I got on the other video. Right on the box, 6 CFM at 40 psi. Compressor requirements, 30 gallons plus for continuous spraying. That would put you in the category of a vehicle, a big trailer, something like that. Continuous spraying. If it's a small project, which more than likely is going to be most of the projects that the average DIYer is going to encounter. 7 to 29 gallons. 1 to 6, not recommended. Okay, we've got our fitting on here. We've got our gun pretty well set up. One thing I mentioned in the last video, you'll want to make a scribe, a reference on your back fluid dial here. Otherwise, every time you make an adjustment, you have to kind of go back to 0 and then start over. If you just make a little scribe on here, you'll always have that reference. You can use a Sharpie, but as soon as you hit that Sharpie with some solvent, it's going to be gone. Okay, before I even put anything in this, I'm going to open the fluid valve 1.5 turns. I'm going to start with my spray pattern at a 0, and I'm going to close my air pressure valve. Okay, let's put a little bit of solvent in here and we'll test our spray pattern. Now, typically I use these. When I'm lazy, I just pour right out of the can. Our first comment that I thought was really useful was from somebody who said, pour with your spout at the top. It will help with the burping or the chugging. So, let's pour some acetone in here. Well, that seemed to work. With a full can, that would be a little bit more difficult. Okay, let's go head over to our test cardboard and we'll set our spray pattern. Okay, as mentioned, the cone is set at 0, our fluid is at 1.5 open, and our air pressure is at 0 also. So let's give this a couple turns open. And let's open this a 1/2 turn. Okay, the quick reference that I mentioned last time was a pinky to thumb width away. You want your fan to be a pinky to thumb width tall. So we're pretty close there. Now, a lot of this stuff that I'm going to be spraying today is going to require a thinner cone. So we're really going to be messing around with the fan control here. We're going to be going back and forth quite a bit. What you're looking for is a nice even pattern top to bottom. You don't want a heavy top pattern, you don't want a heavy bottom pattern, and you want to hold your gun perfectly parallel to your surface. Alright, our next step is going to be mixing, but I thought we would cover one more comment here quickly, and that was spraying the area down. Now this is a really good trick. Now you can see a lot of the ground underneath this stuff is still wet because we just pressure washed yesterday afternoon. But this will help. Just make sure you keep your spray pattern below your pieces. Okay, I think we're ready to start mixing. So, a few things here to keep this low budget. Dollar store whisk. It's reusable, it's cheap. I think this particular one was 88 cents. What I do is I bend that loop over on the end and I chuck this thing up in my drill. Next is your mixing cup. You can buy these in bulk if you have a lot of paint projects, or you can buy them individually at your paint store. They should cost you anywhere from about a nickel up to maybe 50 cents. Really invaluable. Use them a few times and then dispose of them properly. Cone filter. I would not put anything in my gun unless it has gone through a cone filter. Also available in bulk. You can get them locally, whatever you got to do. I'm going to link to all these things down in the description, all of the lines that I've had great luck with. Okay, now hardener. There's a lot of different ones available, as long as they say for use in oil-based paint. Once you introduce hardener, you've turned your paint into a 2K, but you also have introduced isocyanides. Isocyanates are a polymer and they're very harmful to the human lungs. You definitely are going to want a cartridge filter mask. I also use a jacket and gloves. Our mix ratio today is going to be the standard go-to for any Rustoleum I do, which is 4 parts Rustoleum to 3 parts reducer to 1 part catalyst. 4-3-1. That's the Majic formula right there. Now another quick tip I should mention, I had my paint shop mix all of these for me. Even when I grab a gallon of Rustoleum off the shelf, I go over the paint counter and I have them shake it for me. Okay, 2 more comments that were really common from the last video. One was taking a scratch awl and punching a few holes in your trough here of your can. Really useful. Now another tip that I got was about making a masking tape spout for your cans. I tried that and I did it wrong. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to make a V here like this with your tape. Now this was a new one to me. I've seen the silicone spouts that you can get that click into the rim. Those are really handy. I've used those before, but I've never seen the masking tape trick here. So let's see if I did it right this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 8 ounces of paint plus 6 ounces of reducer plus 2 ounces of catalyst. That's going to give me my 4-3-1. Alright, that worked out okay. I still got a little bit of paint down the side of my can here. I don't know, maybe I'm still doing it wrong. Alright, let's set this lid on here upside down. Keep the bugs and the dirt out. Set that off to the side. Now I did do a common solvents or hardware solvents crash course video. And if you haven't seen that one, you may want to check it out. There are a few different things that you can reduce these Alkyd enamels with. I'm still sticking with acetone, but there are a few others that are compatible and they will give you different characteristics. Okay, so we've got 8 ounces of our base product. We've got 6 ounces of acetone, and now we're going to go 2 ounces of catalyst. Now, like I mentioned in my last video, the old trade saying goes that 90% of product failures are going to happen on the mixing bench from somebody getting something wrong somewhere. Always make sure you give your product enough time to mix on the mixing bench. You know, I once had a guy tell me, and it makes perfect sense, when you're stirring, you don't want to stir straight down. You want to tilt your mixing device or apparatus at an angle so that you're getting top to bottom mixing. Instead of just spinning everything on their respective layers, you're mixing together top to bottom. Now, there's a couple of things I want to cover when you walk up to your piece. First thing you're going to want to do is analyze it. So I'm looking at this and I can see that if I paint all of this easy stuff first, I'm going to have to lean into it in order to paint all this inside stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk up to this and I'm going to spray all of my hard to reach areas first, and then I'm going to come out and hit all the easy stuff. Now if you familiarize yourself with your gun, you'll quickly learn that if you pull the trigger in a little ways, it's going to activate your air pressure, but it's not going to activate your fluid valve. So when you get to the end of your reach and you fan that material out, that's very handy. So you've just got the air pressure and you're going to kick out, but you're going to keep it activated and then you're going to bring it back through again. If you keep your fluid valve depressed at the end of your pattern, you're going to get a glob or a concentration of paint. So you need to learn how to fan that out. And the more practice you get, the more natural that's going to get. Just automatically released at the end of your pattern, at the end of your stroke. Now, my last video, I had a few comments from people asking, how do you store your gun in between coats for short periods of time? Little tiny bit of acetone, put the lid back on, Cover the hole on the top of your cup, the vent hole. Cover that. Give this a good shake. And then I take my paint cup that I've been mixing in, dump that in there. And then take a tiny bit more acetone. And we're going to run that through. You can see how white that is coming out. And you'll be able to tell it'll get a little more clear as we clean some of that material out of there. Leave a tiny bit of acetone in that cup and hang it back on the gun rack with the lid loose. Put your cone back in here so that you don't attract bugs. And I can store like that for an hour or so comfortably. Okay, we've got a few coats on this now. We've shot it from two different angles, laying flat, tilted up this way. I'm going to let this flash off, and then I'm going to tilt it the other way. We'll have shot it from three different directions then and gotten very good coverage on it. But in the meantime, I'm going to switch over to this stuff and a satin black in the paint pen. Now this is sort of a unique situation here where, as you can see, there's all types of thicknesses on this piece. So we're really going to be working with the fan control on this. So let's do this. I'm going to start off on this. I've got a flat cone right now. I'm going to give this about stay light on your feet. That's going to open me up to about a 4-inch pattern. Okay, we've got this 3-point blower here. Let's have a go at that. You can see kind of an odd shape here. I'm going to open up my pattern. We're looking for about a 70% overlap, meaning once I put a stripe down, I want to overlap that stripe about 70% with my next one. Okay, you can see that's decent coverage there. No runs. Consistently wet throughout. And we're stopping that fluid at the end of each pass. Yeah, look at this. I've got a thin piece. What if I just tilt my gun a tiny bit? Same here. It's a little bit thin. What if I tilt my gun to match the thickness of that material? There you go. We minimized overspray. We didn't have to adjust the fan, we just sort of tilted the gun to match. Here we go, another one. When you're doing this kind of work, I mean, being efficient really helps maximize your profit. The less screwing around you have to do, the better. Okay, now what about all those hard to reach areas? What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my gun down until I'm just shooting a cone. I'm going to turn my fluid up a little bit so that I'm not drying my product in the air. I'm going to leave my air pressure the same. And I'm going to just blow this down in there. And I'm really going to watch that material closely. Make sure I don't pile it on there too heavy to where it's going to start dripping and running. But you can see I'm getting good coverage on that. I'm not wasting a lot of material. And I'm going to hit everything that I can from where I'm sitting right now. And then I'll probably move a few steps away and get a new perspective and shoot everything from that perspective. This expanded mesh is always a little tricky to spray. You almost have to spray it from 3 or 4 different directions. But what we're going to do here is we're going to hit that expanded mesh, and you can see how much of it's traveling through, and it's hitting that back side back there. Now if we don't get 100% coverage on that back side behind the mesh right away, we'll let that mesh flash off, we'll let it get tacky, and then we'll come back through and we'll do the exact same thing until that back side is covered. Okay, now I'm just going to give my fan control a little adjustment there. Open it up a little. Again, we're looking for about a 70% overlap. Eliminate all those dry spots. Keep the wet spot wet, as they say. I want to quick pop the mask off a minute and talk to you guys really quick about being able to keep your work production up on a project like this. You know, it can get tricky with all these different size materials, different angles, especially with the HVLP gun where it has to stay upright, or you know, maybe a little bit canted, but you can't really tip this thing upside down and get in here and do a lot of this work. The key is to be able to adjust this fan as you're spraying. You know, don't be scared to mess around with that. And then leave your fluid control alone and learn to adjust your speed instead of your fluid control, and you can really keep production up. I mean, you can move quickly on a project like this. I just want to do a quick case in point. So we've got 2.5 inch material, we've got 1.25 inch material, we've got some flat plate, we've got some 6 inch material down there. So let's go through and just see how quick we can spray this. I'm going to keep my thumb here on the fan control. I'm not going to adjust my fluid or my air pressure, and I'm going to adjust my speed accordingly. And I'm going to monitor my fluid on my substrate very closely in order to prevent runs. And then another quick tip is I'm just going to stay in one spot, and I'm going to spray everything that I can from that spot, and then I'm going to move to a new spot and get a different perspective and spray everything from that spot. So let's do this. We're going to start at the top on this thin material, and we're going to work our way to the bottom, and we're going to hit all of these different thicknesses, and I'm going to keep my thumb right here on the fluid valve. Ready? Here we go. Okay, now mental note, I've hit the inside of that from this angle, but I've got to hit the inside of that channel from the other side. Okay, I'm still running a cone. I haven't adjusted up yet. I'm still running a really tight cone. But I'm putting out a lot of material right now. That's why I'm moving so quickly. And I've got my air pressure low so as not to dry said material before it hits the substrate. Now I've tipped my gun a little bit too much, and I've got a little bit of product dripping out from between the lid and the cup, so I don't want to hold it over the substrate. Now this luckily is a really rough piece. This customer just wanted a quick paint job on it, and we piggybacked it on a bunch of other paint work. Okay, I've adjusted my fluid up ever so slightly. I'm sorry, my fan control ever so slightly, because I'm getting into some bigger stuff. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip my gun and cover a little bit more of that. Okay, now I've got some thicker stuff. See, my fan is opened up a little bit. Try not to breathe this in. Got me out of breath, holding my breath here. Okay, I'm going to close this back down again. See that? I want to reach through there and hit that. I want to hit this. And that. Okay, let's step over here a little bit. I'm going to hit the inside of that. Shoot down in here a minute. Let's knock this out. Stay nimble. Hit these. Okay, adjust that fan up. Let's knock this out. Okay, get ready. We're going to adjust that fan back down again. We're going to hit these hard to reach areas. Right through there. Okay, I'm getting low on material here. Just about finished our first cut on the back of this rake. What do you say? I think we're ready to move to the other side now, get a fresh perspective, but I need to mix up some more paint. So, okay, I think you guys get the gist of it. I think I'm going to go put my mask back on. What do you think? Let's take a step back. Did we miss anything? Yep, look. Ooh, little one right there. Okay, look it. See that? We got a little run. I don't know if you guys can see that. Little run there. Watch this. I'm gonna chase that out. Okay, if you pull this trigger in just a little bit, it's gonna open up your air valve, but not your fluid valve. Look at that. We're gonna chase that out. We're gonna give that a couple of minutes to tack off, and I'm gonna come back through and remelt it with some fresh paint and really knock that drip down. Save us some work later. Okay, we're all done. All the paint is cleaned up. Everything's got several coats on it, and it looks good. I sprayed 1.5 quarts of black, satin black there. I sprayed 2 quarts of white on this. So let's go through the time and the material breakdown. We had 4 items out there, individual jobs total. It took 6 hours of prep and paint. My shop guy had 1 hour degreasing and pressure washing everything outside, and I had 5 hours in painting it. Total material breakdown. We used 3.5 quarts of paint at $10 a quart. We're going to figure our reducer at the same rate because we had to use some extra solvent in order to clean up all of the guns. So we had 3.5 quarts of reducer, even though we mixed at a 431, at $3.75 per quart. We had 16 ounces of catalyst at $1 an ounce. So our paint total was $35, our solvent total was $13.25, our catalyst was $16. That puts us at a grand total of $64.25 for hard materials. Let's walk through and look at these jobs. Now, what would a customer pay you to pressure wash, clean that, and paint it? What about that? What about 3 fence posts? What do you think you could charge to paint 3 fence posts black? Or this right here was the big one of the day because there's so many angles that this thing has to be hit from. That took a lot of time. What can you charge somebody to paint that? Would they pay you $100 to have each one of those painted? $100 for that? Maybe $10 a piece for the fence posts? That's $330. Minus your $70 in hard material cost, $64. Let's go up to $70 in hard material cost. So your $260 divided by 5 hours, that's roughly what, $50 an hour? Was that worth it? Let's say this. Let's say you charged $125 to paint that, $125 to prep and paint that, $10 a piece on the post. Let's say you got $200 for that. That's what, $480 minus your material of $70. That's not bad. That's $80 an hour. Let's say you make minimum wage. Let's say 5 hours at 15 is $75 plus, let's say, another $75 in material to paint all of these items. That's $150. Do you think that your customer base would pay you $15 an hour to paint all of this stuff? So I guess it just depends. What do you think you can charge your customer base for a project like that? And how much do you value your time? Well, that's it. Thanks for watching. I was hoping to maybe provoke a little bit of thought. Maybe it's something you could do as a side gig. You know, I don't know if you're a high schooler, maybe you're looking for a little spending money, a little gas money. Is that something you're capable of? You know, hustling a little money on the weekend, pressure wash it on Friday afternoon, paint it on Saturday. And, you know, what can you charge your customers? What can you bid that out at? I don't know, that's the way I look at it, that's the way I break it down. Hopefully that helped you guys out. Okay, let's go over these pieces. Now, they sat over the weekend, they had a couple days to dry. I forgot to show you guys the spot where the run was. You know, we shot that, kind of feathered it all out again with just the air pressure. I let it sit for a little bit and then I came back through and hit it with another coat. What that does is it re-softens that coat, kind of melts it, and it flows out really nice, as you can see here. Now, this is rough metal. I mean, you can look here. If the customer would have wanted us to come through and wire wheel it, we could have, but, you know, the main thing is just rust protection, future rust protection, and give it a nice fresh coat of paint. It looks good. You know, we didn't address any of the rust pitting, anything like that. We just put a good heavy coat of Rustoleum, rust preventative paint, professional series paint on it. The more items that you can stack up, especially if they're the same color. You know, let's say instead of 4 different projects here, we painted 8 projects, essentially doubling our money, but it doesn't double your time. So, you know, if you can get 6 projects lined up or 8 projects lined up for a day, then your profit goes up faster than your required time. Thanks a million for watching. As always, if you guys have anything additional to add, please do so in the comments. I would love to hear from you guys. You guys added a ton of useful information in the comment section on the last Rustoleum video, and we incorporated a lot of them into this video. If you guys have more, if I missed anything, please add it. I'd love to hear from you. As always, like, share, subscribe. It helps the video get noticed. Have a good one. Happy spraying.